During the summer, the island's main town of Bornholm throngs with Swedes on holidays, but by September it slows to a relaxed, leisurely pace. The weather is still pleasantly warm, and we find we have Bornholm nearly to ourselves. Once a splendid royal residence, the Bornholm Castle staunchly guarded the strategic sound and was Sweden's southernmost defense against the Danes. Today, of course, Sweden and Denmark are the most compatible of neighbors.
The 20th century saw sweeping changes for Sweden, including universal suffrage and large-scale social reforms. Today, this is one of the most modern, progressive countries in the world. And advances in technology sparked a new string of inventions by the enterprising Swedes. Did you know, for instance, that Swedes were responsible for such modern conveniences as the refrigerator, the vacuum cleaner, and the safety match?
One region that successfully combines old-time craftsmanship with modern innovation is southern Sweden's vast Kingdom of Crystal. Many shoppers come to Sweden with one goal: to buy glass. And this is the place to do it. There are 17 major glassworks, all clustered around this area, where some of the world's most prestigious glassmakers show their wares. One of the most popular factories, Coperhagen, welcomes visitors with guided tours and glass-blowing demonstrations. It's fascinating to watch hot glass being shaped by some of the country's most skilled glass artists. Precise and delicate, the craft produces some startlingly beautiful works.
Now, what makes Coperhagen glass special?
The designs, I think. We have really good designers that works with the company, and they have all these great ideas. It differs from other types of designs. It's very clear and very simple, but all of these colors.
Could I be able to tell the difference between a hand-blown piece of glass and a machine-made piece of glass?
I think you can. A machine-made wine glass is usually thicker, and then you don't have this crystal sound in it.
If you're on a budget but still want to bring home a souvenir or two or three, you can get some great deals by purchasing factory seconds. In the evening, the factory opens its doors for a special hitsill, or herring dinner. Here, to the bouncing rhythms of accordion music, you can dine on traditional Swedish dishes, including herring, of course, baked in the kilns designed to heat glass. Afterwards, you'll be treated to a personalized glass-blowing demonstration. You can even take a shot at blowing a piece yourself. A sometimes shattering experience. This area of southern Sweden has been dubbed immigrant country, in tribute to the great exodus that began more than a century ago. Years of bad harvests sent rural farmers spiraling into poverty.
During the last part of the 19th century and early part of the 20th, huge numbers of Swedes left their homeland and immigrated to North America. This area in southern Sweden was especially hard hit.
Close to 1.3 million people left this country. Novelist Vilhelm Moberg, who was born in the area, wrote movingly about the emotional traumas of these people. The stories were made into the internationally acclaimed films The Emigrants and The New Land. Today, some Swedes who immigrated during the last century have returned here to retire. It's easy to see why. The spirit of Sweden, you see it everywhere here. In the ancient ruins and sturdy castles. And you feel it in the water, the trees, and the dappled sunlight.
After countless centuries, the Swedes continue to breathe life into their own vision of civilization and still maintain their delicate balance with nature. I'm Rudy Maxa. Thanks for joining me.
full av fred og trygt. Du så ljus og åpen.
Norway. It means the way to the north. It's a journey across wild, rugged, untamed scenery. A path followed by bold explorers and great adventurers. A panorama of forests, waterfalls, and midnight sun. Norway's massive fjords launched countless Viking ships. And its dramatic hillsides inspired the plays of Henrik Ibsen and the music of Edvard Grieg.
Norway has a strong sense of identity. It brandishes a grand maritime tradition and nurtures a love affair with the outdoors. Norwegians have a passion for exploration, but they cling loyally to their Nordic roots. Once among the poorest countries in Europe, today Norway is one of the richest, and it offers a wealth of options for excitement-seeking travelers.
This is Europe's most northerly country. We'll start our trip in Oslo and then head south to the scenic Telemark region and on to the stupendous Sogne Fjord. Finally, we'll end in Bergen, Norway's westerly charmer. Oslo's story inevitably begins on the waterfront. Centuries ago, Viking ships sailed off from here on voyages that would take them as far as the Caspian Sea in the east and to America in the west. Today, Norwegian fishermen still wrest their livelihoods from these teeming waters. The Akershus Castle, dating to the 13th century, was the seat of power here in the Middle Ages. Early on, the town center was located a little further south, but when it burnt down for the 14th time, King Christian IV decreed it should be moved here, next to the castle, and that all future houses should be built of stone and brick instead of wood. A 15-minute boat ride across the harbor takes us to Oslo's premier tourist attraction. Bygdøy, a little peninsula across from downtown, is a ship lover's dream. Here, you'll discover the country's greatest collection of maritime treasures. The Viking Ship Museum holds 3 fantastically well-preserved Viking vessels. For more than 300 years, the Vikings traded and raided across Europe and the known world. Early Christian monks left vivid accounts of the terrifying attacks. These ships, excavated from the nearby Oslo Fjord, were used as ceremonial tombs for Viking nobles. They were designed to carry the mighty warriors on their last great voyage, a journey to the kingdom of the dead. Dating all the way to the 9th century, the ships were discovered in a bed of clay at the bottom of the fjord, which protected them from the ravages of time. In their prime, they were loaded with all the necessities a Viking might need in the afterlife. Excavators uncovered a great cache of objects, including wooden pails, leather boots, and fine gold jewelry. For more high seas adventure, we're on to the Fram Museum. The legendary Fram schooner claims the remarkable achievement of having traveled farther north and south than any other surface vessel. Appropriately, the name Fram means forward. In 1893, Fridtjof Nansen and his fellow explorers steered the Fram to the great wilds of the north. They traveled as far as Russia's New Siberian Islands and came within only a few degrees of the North Pole. Then, in 1911, Roald Amundsen guided the Fram to the edge of Antarctica. He and his team took off on foot, becoming the first human beings to reach the South Pole. Our last stop in Bygdøy is dedicated to Norway's great adventurer Thor Heyerdahl. In 1947, Heyerdahl and his crew sailed the famous Kon-Tiki raft from Peru to Polynesia. The world watched in fascination as the group traveled nearly 5,000 miles in the fragile balsa raft. Heyerdahl was trying to show that Polynesia's first settlers might have originally come from South America. Oslo's lively pedestrian street, Karl Johansgate, carves a great central swath through the heart of the city. This is a mecca of shopping and street entertainers. Most of Oslo's best sights are within walking distance or a short bus ride away. A must-see for art lovers is the National Gallery. In the 19th century, the golden age of Norwegian painting found artists such as J.C. Dahl creating romantic views of the countryside. The beautiful and deeply emotional images were often painted by Norwegian artists living outside the country, perhaps fueled by a longing for the sights of home. Then, after decades of naturalism, painters began to express greater mood and imagination. The exciting, almost violent style of Edvard Munch helped spark the expressionistic movement of the 20th century. His early family life was plagued with illness, and his mother died when he was only 5. After studying art in Oslo, he lived for a time in Paris and was greatly influenced by the French artists of the day. In his works, Munch relentlessly explored the themes of anxiety, fear, and death. His great masterpiece, The Scream, would become an international icon. After quenching our cultural thirst, we're ready to sample this city's culinary delights. Just outside the city center, I discovered the hip new Bar Og restaurant. Norway's booming economy is transforming the Oslo food scene, and a growing number of lively, stylish restaurants are springing up. Bar Og uses fresh, local ingredients such as halibut and reindeer, prepared with a little modern panache. What is the concept that you and your kitchen bring to the cooking here in this restaurant?
We combine very different cultures. We do a bit Spanish, a bit Italian style, but it all comes together when we use the Norwegian products.
So we have 3 kinds of fish here, and the potato soup and truffle oil, and it's cool. It's a cool soup. This is spectacular.
Yeah.
Skål. Thank you very much for your wonderful cooking.
You're welcome.
The Norwegian imagination runs wild here at the enormous Vigeland Park, named for sculptor Gustav Vigeland.
In this great green landscape, more than 200 of the artist's works show a breathtaking range of humanity in all its forms. Vigeland grew up on a farm in the south of Norway and started out as a woodcarver. Later, he came under the influence of Rodin while studying in Paris. He began working in this park in 1924 and was still at it when he died 20 years later. The highlight of the park is the soaring obelisk, a writhing mass of 121 human figures, struggling, sleeping, fighting, and clutching one another. Everyone knows about this country's famous fjords, but many visitors don't realize that southern Norway is also chock full of gorgeous scenery. We're making a day trip south through the Telemark area near the towns of Sauerrad and Skien. If you're longing for a glimpse of traditional Norway, you'll find plenty of it in Telemark. It's just a few hours south of Oslo, but feels like a trip through one of those romantic Norwegian paintings. Throughout this country's history, celebrations and festivals mark the passage and pulse of time.
On long summer nights when sun lingered in the sky, people would come from far and wide to join in the fun. Music would play and storytellers would spin epic tales. The festivities would sometimes last for days.
Evjubygdetun, near the town of Sauherad, is an 18th century farm that now serves as a cultural center. The soul of traditional Norwegian society is agricultural life, and Evjubygdetun is still a working farm. Potatoes protected Norwegians from starvation for centuries. Lefse is a traditional potato flatbread. You might think of lefse as the Norwegian tortilla. The bread is usually spread with butter and sprinkled with sugar, then rolled up like a small burrito to eat. During our visit to Evjubygdetun, local residents were entertaining guests with a traditional Norwegian dinner. The celebration begins when the guests are welcomed inside and served wine and sweets. Many Norwegians still wear the national costume, called the bunad, for special occasions and festivals. The heavy jackets, bright linen shirts, and dresses have an almost royal appearance. On holidays or important family events, hosts serve remmergraut. This is a decadently delicious but cholesterol-crazy pudding made with sour and sweet cream. After dinner, everyone works off those calories with music and dancing. The most famous Norwegian musical instrument is the hardanger fiddle. Usually decorated with floral designs and inlaid mother of pearl, the fiddle imparts an almost ethereal tone that seems to spring right from the forests and mountains. According to legend, it's among the hills and caves of the Norwegian countryside that you'll find the trolls. These mysterious creatures appear only after dusk and are thought to have supernatural powers.
They do funny things and they do bad things. They can make things happen with the nature. So you better be a friend with them.
Norway's beloved artist, Theodor Kittelsen, captured the spirit of the trolls in his imaginative works. In this picture, a troll wanders down Karl Johansgate in downtown Oslo. The great playwright Henrik Ibsen also found inspiration in troll folklore for his play Peer Gynt, and he asked Edvard Grieg to compose this music for it. Arguably Norway's most celebrated son, Ibsen spent much of his early life in this house near the town of Skien. Ibsen was one of the most influential dramatists in modern theater. He became famous the world around for such classics as A Doll's House and Hedda Gabler. His realistic plays challenged the sterile and repressive social conventions of the day, and in his later works, he delved deeply into dramatic symbolism. Ibsen was born the son of a local shopkeeper and began his career as a pharmacist's apprentice. He planned to be a doctor, but after failing courses in Greek and math, he turned his energies toward writing. Ibsen spent nearly 30 years living and working abroad, but in 1891 he returned to Norway. While his early works received a cool reception from his countrymen, by the end of his life, he was considered a hero. Well, the scenery of the South has whetted my appetite for some of Norway's legendary fjords. If your schedule is as tight as ours, the easiest way to get the full fjord impact is with the Norway in a Nutshell trip. This is an organized series of train, boat, and bus connections between Oslo and Bergen. They're all coordinated to give you the greatest scenic bang for your tourist buck. We're taking the train from Oslo as it heads out across a vast mountain plateau to the west. We gradually reach an elevation of 4,000 feet and take in the views afforded by the highest railway in Northern Europe. In Myrdal, we change trains and climb aboard the famous Flamsbane, or Flam Railway. This 12-mile, thrill-a-minute run will take your breath away. Though it may feel like you're taking your life in your hands, you'll be comforted to know the train has 5 separate braking systems. We climb steep cliffs and pass through 20 tunnels. And the conductor always makes time for a photo stop at the most impressive waterfall. The train drops us in the little town of Flam. Now for my favorite part, a 2-hour boat cruise.
This branch of the Sonja Fjord is the narrowest in Norway, and the scenery is nothing short of spectacular.
The fjords never fail to enthrall. These long, narrow fingers of seawater stretching deep into the mountains are among the world's most stunning natural formations. The gradual movement of glaciers created the fjords during the last ice age. The glaciers slowly work their way into the mountains, often below the surface of the sea. When the glaciers melted, the resulting crevices filled with seawater. The tiny town of Undredal sits cozily amid the vertical landscape. With a population of fewer than 200 people, Undredal is delightfully unspoiled. Before 1986, the town didn't have a road and could only be reached by boat. The tiny church is one of the oldest in Norway and dates to 1147, about the time that the newly adopted Christian religion was pushing aside those old Nordic gods. This town may not have many human residents, but nearly 500 goats call it home. Undredal is Norway's goat cheese capital. We talked to store owner Leif Engel about the extraordinary cheese that comes from here.
This is the cheese here with the longest tradition. It's unsalted, and we use it normally together with dinners.
This is really, really good. It'll go with just about anything.
Here is the brown cheese. It's made of the whey. You know, the whey is what's left when you're taking away all of the cheese part of the milk, the curd.
To sample how this fresh cheese enhances the local cuisine, you can stop by the restaurant in Flam's Fredheim Hotel. While the hotel's pedigree dates back nearly 150 years, the new restaurant serves up some deliciously modern dishes using impeccably fresh local ingredients. One of my guilty pleasures is this cheesecake, topped with a sauce made of caramel and that brown cheese from Undredal. For a bit of fjord seclusion, we're sleeping down the road at the Gudvangen Fjordtel. Taking cues from Viking tradition, this small guest house is decorated with simple Nordic charm. The quaint rooms shun modern conveniences such as TV in favor of skylight views and dramatic surroundings. Time to bid a fond farewell to the fjords as we head west to the port city of Bergen. For a bird's eye view of Bergen, ride the quaint funicular railway that climbs up the side of Mount Floyen. If you're lucky enough to have fine weather, you'll get a spectacular view of the 7 hills that surround Bergen and the sprawling strand of islands that shelter it from the ocean.
Bergen holds a special place in the hearts of Norwegians. In the Middle Ages, this was Norway's most important town and home to royalty.
Loaded with history, the atmospheric port has an easygoing nautical air. In the 14th century, it became a member of the Hanseatic League, the powerful group of German port cities that monopolized trade in Scandinavia.
40 kroner.
The city's beautifully preserved old quarter is called Bryggen. A string of wooden warehouses that line the waterfront, this was the site of the city's original settlement. The warehouses stored tons of fish shipped from northern Norway and dispatched throughout Europe.
The German merchants who ran the Hanseatic League completely dominated the area's economy, forcing local fishermen into a state of dependency. The Norwegian kings played along by requiring the fishermen to sell their catch to the merchants at prices the merchants themselves set.
Our hotel in Bergen, the Clarion Admiral, is located right on the waterfront. It's hard to imagine this was once a marine warehouse from the early 1900s. The recently renovated hotel has a wide range of room options, and the restaurant has terrific harbor views. The streets of Bergen echo with the music of Edvard Grieg, Norway's world-famous composer. Grieg lived in the outskirts of the city in this lakeside home called Troudhagen, or Hill of the Trolls. Working through the end of the 19th century, Grieg composed some of the most popular works in the standard orchestral repertoire, including that wonderful Peer Gynt. He was born in Bergen, the son of a saltfish merchant. Much beloved in his home country, he was known for his modesty. He once wrote, "I make no pretensions of being in the class of Bach, Mozart, and Beethoven."
His works came to symbolize the romantic ideal of Norway and helped spur the Norwegian movement for independence from Sweden.
Norway. It's a land of drama and contrasts, of glacial lakes and warm-hearted people, of tiny villages and massive fjords, of endless summer days and long, dark winters.
And for the adventurous traveler who chooses to follow the way to the north, it's the experience of a lifetime. Thanks for joining me. I'm Rudy Maxa. Adieu, or goodbye.
Guardi, vada lì.
Oh, up here, we go up here. I keep my passion for travel alive by nurturing a little sense of adventure. Sure, I love the great, vibrant cities with their culture, museums, opera, ballet, fine restaurants. But I think you have to look beyond the well-publicized attractions to get the full experience. Ask locals for advice, do a little research, take a few risks. My best tip, find yourself a local festival.
Here's where the villages focus on their special history or product. It's our chance to tune into their pride of tradition. Each festival is unique, and visitors are very welcome. Chateau Reynard in Provence parties once a year in honor of its dairy industry. Across the Alps, the tiny village of Chiesa also honors the cows, but with a more rustic style.
We got cows, we got porcini, we got wine, we got warm milk, we've got local cheese, we got the accordion player. I call this a festival.
Most of these little festivals show off a year's worth of preparations. Local efforts putting together traditional decorations, costumes, even teams whose players train all year for the big event, as in Pienza's cheese rolling competition. Many of the celebrations have roots going back to the Middle Ages, when developing cities sponsored trade fairs to put their locales on the map. A festival could have royal roots, as in the Loire Valley Renaissance fairs that recall the great chateau days of regal court parties. Festivals or fairs, they were lively centuries ago, and they're still great fun. These festivals immerse you quickly into the local scene, but you can also enjoy a break from crowds, starting right off in Europe's gateway cities. We begin our trips in a city like Amsterdam, and we've primed ourselves to take the multitudes and noise, as well as to see original masterpieces by Rembrandt and Van Gogh. But even city folk hanker for some peace and quiet, so here's my next tip. Ask around and check out a city neighborhood. You might be surprised at how sweet and friendly it feels. Amsterdam hospitality invites you to explore. Just borrow one of the free bikes placed around the city for public use. The historic Jewish community of Jordan makes for a good wander. Foreigners have felt at home here since the 17th century, when Dutch trading vessels attracted sailors from every continent. Roaming the back streets can lead you into smaller, less publicized museums. The Amstelkring Museum recalls an unusual period of Dutch history. Although Holland had previously welcomed religious refugees, around 1580 the Netherlands Reformation forced Catholics to become Protestant or to do their worshiping in private. The result? Awesome churches hidden away in private homes. Amstelkring is the only one left of its kind. A stunning church built in 3 levels of a merchant's attic. This superb, little-known museum also features the 17th century rooms preserved virtually intact. Today, in step with the country's open-door hospitality, all religious communities get a state subsidy. In just about any big city, you can find a route to peaceful nearby getaways. Think of all those city dwellers looking for a change of pace. And here in Holland, you feel you can float your life away.
If you find yourself in the Dutch countryside, you'll learn Amsterdam isn't the only place in the Netherlands with canals.
The labyrinth of canals is a wonder and nothing new to the Dutch. For 800 years, they've scooped land from the North Sea and built dunes and dikes to stop the ocean from reclaiming it. The word nether means lying below the Earth's surface. The Netherlands, a fitting name for a country where 40% of its land is below sea level. An easy shot from the city is the museum village of Zaanse, created in 1960. It's a 17th century town on an historic site near the River Zaan. The authentic local buildings were barged in and restored. The windmills seem to turn in 57 varieties, and they're made of thatch. Each one was carted from its working place near the Zaan River. Wandering the streets gives you a sense of daily life 300 years ago.
So you need 10 liters of milk to make only 1 kilo of cheese.
You can taste heavenly cheese and observe maestro cheesemakers. And community workshops are buzzing just as they always have.
Now I'll show you how we make the inside, and that's done on this machine. Again, works in the same way as how they make duplicates of keys.
This getaway is not only a museum with vitality, it's also home to the real people who live and work here. For many of us, train travel itself can be a getaway. We're riding the rails south for a short trip to Delft. Here's where you see land reclaimed from the sea. Flat, flat, flat. It's said that Napoleon called the region the most beautiful he'd ever seen. Delft is about an hour south of Amsterdam. It's been a town since 1246, and it's so carefully preserved that it looks like a medieval stage backdrop. Canals, of course, and narrow alleyways and bridges.
There's been royal intrigue in sweet-looking Delft. In 1584, Prince William of Orange was assassinated here, and the bullet holes still mark his residence. He'd bested Spain in establishing Dutch independence from Spanish rule, and his enemies hoped his death would reestablish Spain's dominance. It was not to be. Holland emerged from the struggle a world power.
Its power grew from its international trade, and Delft pottery, the town's claim to fame, carries some of that history with it today. Dutch merchants roamed the world and brought back ideas and goods from all parts of the globe. Traditional Dutch pottery soon reflected these influences.
In this glass cabinet, we see the 4 main techniques that we produce here. On the top, we have the Delft Blue. In the middle, we have the polychrome, based on European majolica from the Mediterranean area. Down on the left, we have the Pijnacker, based on the Japanese Imari porcelain. And down there on the right, we have the Black Delft, based on Chinese lacquerware.
Even today, if you buy authentic Delft porcelain, it will be hand-painted according to the traditions of the 17th century. To really relax, try your hand. Sign up for a painting workshop. In Germany, we've picked a favorite alpine village, Mittenwald. For me, part of the delight is just getting there. From Munich, you head south on the back roads for almost an hour. Once you're there, let the charm take over. Murals are everywhere. Bavarian villages spill over with traditional crafts and skilled artisans. Mittenwald's violin making has been the village signature card for more than 300 years. Mittenwald, the quintessential alpine beauty, was a stopping place on the old Augsburg-Verona trade route. Imagine what a sight for weary travelers. And now let's cross the border to a major jumping-off city, Vienna.
Once you cross into Austria, strains of Strauss waltzes and the sound of music play havoc in your brain. Next come the images of Kaffee mit Schlag, and apple strudel, and Freud, and Mozart, the 8-year-old composing a symphony. All right, so I've seen too many movies.
Vienna is a symphony of culture and the arts, stunning structures, and the legacy of Habsburg power. But for those looking for a getaway, it's the perfect setting, nestled majestically on the mighty Danube River. A trip on the Danube is restful and delightfully beautiful. The river runs 1,500 miles from the Black Forest to the Black Sea, and it links Central Europe to the rest of the continent. Not far from Vienna, the romantic Wachau region stretches for 20 miles on the river to the town of Melk. When your boat nears the spectacular Melk Abbey overlooking a cliff, you'll know it. Melk Abbey, one of the great sights of Europe, also offers tranquil relief from city bustle and noise, and it's done so since 1089. After centuries of wear and tear, the abbey was rebuilt in the 18th century and transformed into what you see now, Austria's spectacular model of Baroque architecture. The abbey is still a monastery and learning center, and the library's inventory includes 1,200 medieval manuscripts. Europe's royalty liked meeting in Vienna anyway, and they loved to unwind at Melk Abbey. Even Napoleon slept here. And of course, as Austrian getaways go, it's really hard to beat the Salzkammergut or Lakes District. The town of Salzburg itself is a wonderland of overload. Mozart, Baroque fountains, medieval streets, and a towering fortress. And Salzburg is surrounded by nature's stunning backdrop. The Salzkammergut is a scenic drive from Salzburg. Here you can find your own sweet escapes, including forgiving mountain trails and St. Wolfgang's Lake Resort. Traffic in resort towns can be a pain, but it's not too bad if you arrive early. That is, if you'd like to stop in St. Wolfgang to see for yourself why the 12th century saint built a hermitage here and why pilgrims followed faithfully. Then you can head out to Dachstein Mountain, where cable cars climb to the top in a thrilling 20 minutes for breathtaking views that strip away any ragged travel edges.
Okay, now we've moved away from city destinations and their easy shot at getaways into regions where the whole area could be considered a getaway. So, are you ready for a glimpse of laid-back France? Let's head for Provence.
With a car, it's easy to explore at your own pace. Enticing villages pull you in. Provence's countryside quite simply encourages meandering, and one charming and restful village leads to another. Narrow alleys, houses crowded together, solid stone buildings, crumbling ruins. Part of the fun in visiting these villages is trying to imagine the life that pulsed through them.
What's always interesting to me is, what were people eating? Well, they weren't slurping down spaghetti or corn or potatoes, not even chocolate, coffee, tea, rice, or tomatoes. Those things arrived in Europe centuries later. Instead, the medieval housewife, say the wife of a successful merchant, headed to the market every day. Remember, there was no refrigeration.
In Aix-en-Provence, a medieval housewife might still find her way. Centuries ago, she was picking over live chickens and ducks, live fish and eels swimming in water barrels, salted beef, meat-filled pastries, cheese, wine, oil, and bread. Not a bad selection.
Saucisson de Salier, please.
Look at it.
Bon.
Turn it up.
She added flavors from her own kitchen garden with onions, leeks, greens, herbs like basil, sage, and parsley, and fruits like apples and pears. She sprinkled flower petals in stews and salads, daylilies, lavenders, peonies, marigolds, and sunflowers. If the lady had extra pennies, she splurged on spices brought in from the mysterious East.
It's a tradition as old as the villages of Provence. Once a week, every village, no matter how large or small, has an outdoor market. Try to find out when it is. Most guidebooks will tell you, or ask any local.
Now, on to Italia. If high energy Italy is your dream destination, believe it or not, there are places to get away. Florence, however, is not one of them. Wandering here is like floating in an overwhelming time warp with the awesome Renaissance halting you at every turn. I love it. However, a wander down narrow streets or along the Ponte Vecchio offers no hint of escape. To complicate matters, the nearby medieval hill towns of Tuscany bulge with tourists much of the summer. There's a reason. They're magic towns. So how do you find Italy's magic without feeling trampled? Take heart. This is when you rent a car. And if you're bullish on avoiding crowds, drive past and beyond the big-name hill towns. The provinces of Tuscany and Umbria are breathtakingly rural, historic, and abundant. Part of the magic is discovering a village on your own. Just south of Siena lies the region of Val d'Orcia,